Should I run for the hills? Story 1. I dated one for a few months when I was younger. She was a lot of fun, but the farm she lived on always came first. It was not a bad thing and did not affect the relationship, but just know that there will be times when you are not the priority. The best way to keep her and her friends and family liking you is to help. Just help around with the horses and other animals without being asked to. Story 2. A question that I can actually answer. I dated 2 horse girls. The main takeaway is this: you will always come second to the horse. No matter what you do, the horse will always get the priority. Also, be prepared for it to become a part of your life as well. This goes far beyond any casual hobby. It's a lifestyle. It's up to you to decide if you're willing to make that commitment. Story 3. I married one. They are great on top, tend to have rich families and land. They are tough as nails. The biggest downside is that if you break your ankle, she will shoot you. Story 4. About a decade ago, a friend of mine and I were both trying to win the affection of a woman who frequented the same bar as us. She was a 6-foot-tall, curly-haired brunette version of Ellie Mae Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies movie, who could impressively drink from a wine bottle. He ended up taking her home and shortly thereafter started dating her. I was disappointed at first but quickly got over it once I realized what he had inadvertently signed up for. At 1 a.m., the bar would be closing and most of us would go home to sleep, but he would have to drive her an hour south to her family's farm. He had to help her clean all the manure out of the stables and lay down fresh hay every single night until 4 a.m., just to drive the hour back home after they were done. Somehow, he lasted a year with her, and when he broke it off, she slashed his tires and keyed his car. Suffice to say, I feel like I dodged a bullet on that one. Story 5. You will always be third on the priority list. First is her, second is the horse or horses, then comes you and your needs. You have to make up your own mind if you can live with that. By the way, you're fourth on the list if she has kids. Story 6. I dated a horse girl. She was wild. She literally came up to me while we were alone in the pool, started making out with me, and let me bite her when we were 17. Then again, she was wild. She got jealous and hit me with a horse whip on my back. Running for the hills will not work. Horses can go fast in terrains that are not rocky. Run for the mountains. Use the rocky terrain to your advantage and climb. Avoid plains and steppes. Congratulations, you're a dwarf now. Welcome to the mines. Please do not let your canaries go hungry. Edit. An award? All I can say is brothers of the mine rejoice. Story 7. If my niece is any indication, horses will dominate a lot of what you do with her. In a way, it's a pet that must be cared for regularly, but its needs are higher than that of a dog. It's generally not a pet that can be kept at home, so traveling to take care of it is a regular responsibility. For those who get into it, that level of care can cut into the time available for a relationship. It's not a bad thing. It's just a way of life that can make a partner feel secondary to the horse. If you think they're worth it and can handle coming in second place occasionally, go for it. Even better if you can help them care for the horse. Story 8. 3 years ago, I had a car of mine entered into a week-long auto convention. At this event, I met my current girlfriend. Shortly after we met, we started dating, and she moved in with me. About a year later, we purchased a 32-acre farm where we now have our own horses and have boarded horses as well. I knew the whole time she was passionate about horses, but never imagined we would have our own farm with our own horses. Story 9. They are pretty high on the crazy scale, right next to hairdressers and women called Tiffany. Edit. 1,700 likes? Guess I hit the bullseye. Thanks, guys. Story 10. My wife was a horse girl. Looked fantastic in those English breeches, and she still does. My mom, too. She just did a week-long ride through the Grand Canyon at 70 years old. Last year, she forded a river on a horse, then jumped off and held on to the tail while the horse swam the rest of the way. She's 95 pounds soaking wet and will probably live to 100 and be on horseback until 90 unless a horse kills her sooner. Love them both dearly, but there's a little bit of crazy in a horse girl. And even if not, it's not a cheap hobby. Story 11. Priorities for horse girls. 1. Their horses. 2. Photos of their horses. 3. Food for the horses. 4. Saddles. 5. Equipment for the horses. 6. Cleaning the horses. 7. The stables for the horses. Riding their horses. 9. Telling everyone about their horses. 10. Not you. Story 12. I went out with a horse girl for a few years in my 20s. Here's my experience. 1. Ready for intimacy anytime, anywhere. The risk of getting caught didn't bother her, and she seemed to like it if we'd been seen or there was a danger of getting caught. Mood swings like all the time. Happy, shiny, enthusiastic 1 minute, crying and depressed the next. Once gave me oral in an empty cinema, and then cried afterward when Wally died. See point 1. Expensive taste. She was very materialistic and wanted to buy things all the time, whether she had money or not. Eventually left me for a much older, richer man. Story 13. As a realistic answer, I have never met a horse girl without a donkey. They are usually good, responsible people who expect more from everyone around them. Crazy for sure, but like a semi-healthy crazy. Like bodybuilding. One of those hobbies that just sucks you in and never lets go. Story 14. The first thing you need to know about horse girls is that they are part of a horse community. It's more of a lifestyle than a hobby. If you don't like that community, you're not going to see that girl much. The second thing is that they have dependents. Living things require maintenance and care for their well-being. They will have demands on their time. If you don't enjoy doing those things with her, you're probably not going to see her much. As far as the horse girls or crazy trope goes, they enjoy jumping on the back of a half-ton wild animal with no brakes and running 30 miles per hour through the woods. Of course, they're a little crazy. If you're not a little crazy too, it's probably not going to work out long-term. Story 15. Danger in anything but a short-term deal, though they tame out at around 24. Often freaks in bed, so if you're a pretty vanilla guy, you might have trouble keeping up. Story 16. I married a horse girl. It's important to find one who has their own identity outside of being a horse girl. The ones who make it their sole reason for living are usually weird and maladjusted. I know everyone says horse girls are crazy, and while that's not entirely true, there are a lot of quirky women who just seem to be attracted to the hobby. Relatively normal ones do exist too, but horses are expensive and live a long time, so if things get serious, it's kind of like bringing along a child from a previous relationship. She boarded her horses for years at a stable, and if you add up the monthly rent she paid over that time, it is absolutely nauseating to think about. We're talking, you could have bought a house cash kind of money. For us, she doesn't ride anymore, but we now have them on our small farm. I have zero interest in horses or anything horse-related, but it is pretty cool having them around. Sure, they can be skittish idiots, but they can also be pretty funny as well, and it's nice to look outside and just see them doing their thing, either grazing, napping, or relaxing. Story 17. My ex is one. She is crazy and feels entitled. Her daddy paid for everything, and she doesn't work. She asked me multiple times to buy her and future kids a horse. She said herself that horse girls are special. She doesn't know how to communicate with people. Animals don't complain, and she loves that. Legs and butt were great. Story 18. I am trying to be serious here. I grew up some in the South, some in the Midwest. Horse girls have always been a particular brand of crazy that's hard for me to define. I'm fine with people having hobbies. In fact, I think it's endearing and cute when a girl has a hobby that I'm not really interested in, but she's passionate about it and she talks about it. The fact that she's so into it is what gets me into it. I like animals and even find horses to be majestic creatures on their own. But horse girls, I don't know what it is. It's not really a hobby for them. It literally can't be. Horses require so much maintenance. You have to center a major portion of your life around them for it to be a sustainable hobby. And it's expensive as anything. You can't just casually have a horse. You have to be all in for it to be worthwhile. It's different from any other kind of pet, both in financial and time expenditure. And then there are those horse girls who don't actually own a horse yet. I've never been with one that didn't act so dissatisfied half the time simply because they didn't have a horse or didn't have plans to go horseback riding one weekend or something. And finally, personally, something visceral happens inside of me when a girl starts talking about longing after owning a horse. I don't know what it is or why it happens. I don't find it endearing at all. It drives me away from them. I'll admit that this is a weird, bizarre line to draw. I don't have any other hard stops like this with any other hobby that I can think of. Horse ownership is just so utterly impractical. It's complete and utter nonsense to me. So if you're fine owning a horse, or constantly having to hear about possibly owning a horse, then have fun with your new girl. Story 19. As a female who works in the animal field, they are crazy. Like Joe from You, who is obsessive about their horses. They might be able to hide this from you until you're trapped. 10 out of 10 don't recommend. Story 20. Most of them are out of their minds, but not all of them. If you find the one who's not, you end up with a girl whose legs are like a vice, and who leaves you free to hang out with the boys on weekends because she is riding. Story 21. Unless you feel like becoming a horse guy, I'd say run for the hills. Horse life will come first for her, and you'll be put on the back burner unless you become a horse guy. Story 22. She was a solid girlfriend of 3 years, except that she smoked. But when we bought a house, she was really lazy and didn't pay for any of the improvements like the roof or floors, which stressed me out, but I stuck with her. Then one day, her horse had to get minor surgery, and the veterinarian charged her $4,000. It stressed her out so much that she broke up with me and moved back in with her parents so she could pay it off. Funny thing is, I was going to help her pay for it. Glad I didn't. Story 23. I grew up around horses, and honestly, I think it's just a common special interest for undiagnosed autistic women. A lot of the crazy people complain about is really just meltdowns or not getting the social game. However, if she is wealthy and rides dressage, it is only worth it if you intend on living off her father's income. Story 24. Had a 5-year relationship with one. She wasn't crazy. She was kind of cold and down to earth, though as one is when they grow up on a farm, the small have to do actual work farm, not the daddy pays for everything kind of farm. Which was good because the relationship had almost zero nonsense. Had thighs like no tomorrow. The intimacy was spectacular. But as others have said, ultimately I was secondary to the horse, at least. She grew cold over time as well, probably because I didn't share that interest at all and didn't want to combine our time together with the horses. It's not that I was jealous. I'm just afraid of them and would prefer not to be in their vicinity. But there's no way of knowing why. It could have been that she just fell out of love, or we didn't communicate well, or whatever. We were both right out of high school at the start, so we grew up into different people than the people who fell in love, I'd say. In any case, we broke up on amicable terms, and she's still a good person. I wouldn't call her crazy at all. Story 25. The horse comes first and needs maintenance every day. Also, be prepared to watch horse riding for a certain amount of time in bad weather with cold temperatures. In addition, if you ask, "Oh well, can I help with something?" be prepared to dig dirt with a shovel. To be honest, I hate horses because of my ex-girlfriend with horses. Every goddamn thing is about the horses, which are all called thunder, storm, cloud, or beauty. It's a definitive no for me, although they have amazing endurance. Yes, no, I will not walk behind your horse, even if you say it normally never kicks and I can trust it. It's my energy, I know. Story 26. As someone who has been in a relationship with a horse enthusiast for going on 10 years, she doesn't compete anymore because of the hours she works, but she probably should, as she is a very talented rider. Her weekends, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., are dedicated to horses. I won't see her during the workdays from 6 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. We live together. It's her hobby, and it makes her happy. If you can respect that and understand that the priority isn't you, then you will probably have a good relationship. It also allows you to have hobbies. Just set ground rules about finances and horses if you end up in a long-term relationship with a horse enthusiast. Expenses can get significant. Also, if one of their horses dies, they will grieve as if one of their best friends has died. There is a certain connection riders have with their horses, especially ones that they have had for 10 to 25 years. Story 27. Abort mission. We put all of our time, money, and mental health into glorified farm animals that try to kill us. We are all certified bats hit whether we're aware of it or not. Is my stamina on top impressive? Yes. Will I ever spend as much time and money on you as I do on my horses? No. Story 28. There are horse girls and equestrians. Don't get them confused. A true horse girl is the best thing that can happen to anyone. The rest, yeah, run for the hills. Story 29. Not gonna lie, I still think of her sometimes. Just something about her that was so special. The way she loved animals and the way she smelled. That smell of hay and old leather. The way she looked in her boots. The way she was down to fix anything and wasn't fazed by the world. She was lovely. Story 30. Horse girl as in a girl who rides horses. They have very strong and muscular thighs. But if you mean horse girl as in a half-human, half-horse mutant hybrid, then I can't say I've ever met one before. Story 31. I was married to one. I would consider it an absolute deal breaker going forward. There are two kinds of horse girls. Ones who understand horses are a luxury, and ones who think horses are a necessity. The ones who think they are a necessity have no money and will make sure you don't have any money either because horses are insanely expensive. The ones who understand they are a luxury can probably afford them, but still seem to prioritize them over actual human relationships. Both kinds of horse girls will dictate where you can live, must have acreage or be near an expensive boarding stable, and both kinds of horse girls will look at their partner as someone who signed up to do free farm work forever. Your experience may vary, of course. I've met some very sweet horse girls, but I would never share finances with one again, and I've done enough barn work to last the rest of my life. Hard pass.